Wake up and let's go to the Mindless Morning Show.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Mindless Morning Show. I'm here as always with my co-host, Dakota. And then we have a very special guest that I'm just so honored to have on our show with us. The wonderful director, writer, producer, Jong. How are you doing, man?
Great, thank you.
Oh, man.
And thank you for pronouncing my name correct.
Oh, thank you. I tried.
He was practicing quite a bit.
Yeah.
You know what? Just to tell of a little anecdote before you start the serious questions, of course. I really knew I had made it in America after Drop Dead Fred when my name appeared in a baby's name book. And there was a baby's name book in 1993 that said Ate, and behind brackets, director of Drop Dead Fred. I think that was the best review I've ever had. I think I made it. All the rest is important. Oscars doesn't matter. When you're in a baby name book, that is something.
So
yes, that's awesome.
Did somebody name their kid after you?
I don't think so, because
it has to be.
They probably thought, my name is Ate, but it spells like ATE, so 8. So everybody thought, this is a bit too weird.
Well,
it is actually originally. I take over completely. You have nothing to say anymore, of course. It is originally a Greek goddess.
Oh, okay.
Which now helps because everything is diversity, and if you're not attached to diversity, you don't get subsidy or money in Europe anymore. So I can now say that I'm actually a woman. Because look at my name, it's a Greek goddess. No, it is a goddess who brings mischief among the other gods. So I'm not so sure if it's a good goddess. That's something else.
Well, I mean that's definitely one way to look at it. And
yeah,
for our listeners who aren't seeing this, he is in a fantastic shirt right now. Like, I mean, you are popping, man. Like what are the pictures of? They're
actually stamps, and they're not just stamps, British stamps.
Okay.
So are you shipping yourself somewhere?
Yeah. It's easier to travel that way.
Yeah, well, I guess so. And so, I mean, if you guys haven't figured out yet, you are the director, writer, producer of Drop Dead Fred.
No, that's not correct. I'm the director, definitely, but I'm not a writer and I'm not a producer.
Okay.
I do write and produce, but I didn't do that on Drop Dead Fred.
Okay. So you are the director of Drop Dead Fred, and it's fantastic film. It is a childhood favorite that I grew up watching. It was my mother's favorite. She had the movie. I watched it. It was great. And to this day, I still love it. And it was made in 91, and I still feel like all these years, actually 30 years now, it has still held up to be an incredible film. And unfortunately, that didn't seem to be the case when it first came out.
It's a mixed blessing. I mean, the film was an indie film. It was, for that time, made on a low budget, which is still a reasonable amount of money if you come from the boonies as I do. But the film was not received critically very warmly. There were a few people who liked it, but generally it was lukewarm, to say it kindly. And there were a few like Siskel and Ebert who flat out hated the film, but they hated it enough to make it interesting again. And but strangely enough, or luckily enough, the film received a core base. It did commercially for an indie film very well all over the world. And now it's sort of like it never disappeared actually, but specifically the last few years, it is a sort of resurgence, and it has built up a completely new fan base, basically a new generation, which is of course heartwarming because let's face it, I mean, people always say films are forever. That's absolutely not true. 99% of the film or whatever percentage disappears. And those are big films, small films, all those films disappear. films that still exist after 30 years, outside like special screenings in a film museum or something, are very rare. So I feel extremely blessed. And in all fairness, I think the credit belongs to Rick Mayall more than anyone. You know, he's the leading actor in the film. He's absolutely brilliant. I think, secondly, the concept of an imaginary friend who comes back to create havoc is also brilliant. And then way after that, I contributed something. But I feel that I'm so lucky to be able to jump on the bandwagon of a film that still exists after 30 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible work. And for many people, it has stood the test of time.
Yeah. I do think that has to do with the fact this is the serious side, and after that we're going to make fun all the time again, I hope. There has always been a layer in the film of child abuse. I don't know how else to say it. It is not obvious. It's a comedy, so nobody thinks about it. But the young child was basically treated very badly as a young kid. Mm-hmm. And that's why she needed the imaginary friend. And when her life is broken down again, when she's a young adult, the imaginary friend comes back. But so the core of the story is actually very serious. You know, the fact that she was traumatized to some degree was never talked about, was never really indicated, but it's hidden there. And that was something that I absolutely brought in. And I think that's one of the reasons why the film stands the test of time.
Yeah. Overall has a good message.
Yeah, that's true. Especially nowadays with mental health issues and all that being on the rise and things like that. It's definitely something that I think more people should definitely be aware of and check out the movie because it's great. And to get people to check it out, though, this is one thing that always baffled me. There used to be Papa John's commercials that you buy a large pizza, you get a free DVD of Drop Dead Fred. Now, that's like having, I don't know, like they threw a gem on a pile of shit. Like how do you give away a DVD like of that caliber with just a pizza? Like who's the marketing on that?
I in all honesty, I didn't know that. I had no recollection of ever hearing that. But there is an opportunist in every director. You know, you can have a lot of principles, but one of the things almost all directors have is that the one thing that stands above everything is like the more people who see my film, the better. So if it has to go through Papa John's or a pizza concern, that's okay.
Yeah.
But why they did it, I have no idea.
Well, you're probably owed some royalties somewhere.
Yeah, some pizza royalties.
The film at that time was released by New Line, who did the Freddy Nightmare Elm Street films, and that sort of film. So maybe somebody there came up with a smart marketing gimmick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't a Happy Meal toy.
I mean, if I open up a pizza and there's a DVD in there, I'm most likely going to watch that DVD to see what it is. That's for sure.
That's very valid.
Yeah.
All right, valid. So, how was it to work with Rick Mayall?
Well, Rick was. It's always easy. The good man is dead, so nothing bad about the dead. But that is very easy in this case, because there's nothing bad to say. He was a very great man. I had to be approved by him, by the way. The film was set up by the writers. The writers had always in mind that Rick would play the lead. And because Rick wanted to do it, Working Title started to make the film. And I was lucky enough to be hot for 1 month in Hollywood at that time. So I got the film offer. People always ask me, oh, did you know the film that it was going to be special? Of course not. I was just a gold digger. I got the film offer, and I thought, it's a shot. I'll do it. If I hadn't, I had that with my Miami Vice. I had never read my Miami Vice until I was in the plane to Miami, and I read it, and I absolutely did not understand the script. But I thought, well, it's probably good to do Miami Vice. Well, the same was with Drop That Thread. Of course, I read the script and all that, and I liked it. But the fact that it would become this film was a bit luck. But before the film was made, I had to fly over to the UK to be approved by Rick. And I think the fact that I was European helped. The fact that I was Dutch and therefore had a very easy attitude towards sexuality helped. There is virtually no explicit sex. There is no explicit sex in Drop That Thread. But when you talk to somebody and he make a few jokes and he had the feeling that I was not prudish, that certainly helped with Rick. And I had a similar background. Rick was very politically active in his comedy. Yeah? You know, he was very anti-Thatcher. While we were making the film, Thatcher actually stepped down. And Rick said, this is a complete disaster because now I can't make jokes about her anymore. Or, you know, her whole career, he made jokes why she should disappear. But now she was gone. It was a disaster for the comedians. But politically, we were on the same line. And I had made, of course, a number of films that combined comedy with social issues, you know, which I made in Holland. So he approved me, and then that's when it started. People very often think that he improvised a lot, and that actually didn't happen. He was involved with the script, so he was involved with the writing of the jokes. And once I was involved, also I was involved in the fine-tuning of the script also, and the changing and all that sort of thing. But once a scene was written, and everybody, well, in this case, Rick and I liked it, then there was not that much improvisation anymore. It was really like doing it, and he could absolutely do the same scene 10 times with the same energy and in the same way.
That's cool.
But he always said, I'll follow you from here to Stalingrad. You know, the expression in Europe is, I follow you from here to Tokyo. I don't know what that expression means, but that's the expression. But he always said, I'll follow you from here to Stalingrad. And he was extremely loyal.
That's awesome.
Sounds like a good guy.
Yeah, a lot of his interviews, he seems to be really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. But he wasn't like, you know, these days you always hear a lot of people from their ADHD, whatever the abbreviation is in English. But he wasn't like that. I mean, when he wasn't shooting, he was relatively calm. He wasn't serious. You have some comedians that are very funny when they do their stand-up, and then when they're not doing their stand-up, they're very serious and a bit boring people. That wasn't true. Rick remained very upbeat and very involved. But the extra energy that Drop That Thread had, that wasn't something he did in real life.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So if who would originally have been casted to play Fred if it wasn't going to be Rick?
I can't really give a good answer to that because I'm not aware of it. And I've only known the project with Rick attached. I've heard stories that Robin Williams was supposed to be approached, but I've never heard those confirmed. I know of a story when the film was finished, there was an enormous drive to do a sequel. But Rick was a little bit hurt by the reviews because he was used to being praised enormously, and he wasn't in this case. And it's a sad thing that he didn't really live long enough to see the whole resurgence. Right. When they talked about a sequel, the American financiers also talked about a non-English actor. So they talked about Jim Carrey. And the weird thing was, they were very serious about it at that point. But Jim Carrey had done, I think, he had done a few films, but one that became very successful, that was Ace Ventura. And the studio heads at that point said, well, you know, I think he's a one-film star. So they didn't offer it to him. They didn't think he could carry the film.
Oh.
Which I think Jim Carrey is phenomenal also. He's different than Rick is, obviously, but so you can see how strange it is. And apart from those names, of course, in the later stories about the sequels, but now I'm talking about like 15, 20 years later after the film was made, was Sir Russell Brand. Russell Brand was going to do a remake of Drop Dead Fred, but it never materialized.
Oh, really? Wow.
But when the film was the original film in the early 1990s, I've never really heard of other actors. They might have been there, but I certainly wasn't involved. For me, it was always Rick, because Rick had to approve me, so it wasn't the other way around or anything.
Right. Well, that's really, yeah. So are there any scenes from that movie at all that you had ultimate decision over, like you added, or anything in particular that wasn't originally part of the script?
Yeah. Ultimately, of course, when you are the director, you have a veto right anyway. I mean, if you change something on the set, and the writers were there because they were also co-producers. This was a time where writers became associate or co-producers solely for the reason that they could be on the set. Because if you're a director and you say, I don't want the writers on the set, they're not allowed to be there, according to director's rule. If you're a director and you say, I don't want a co-producer on the set, you can't do that. So that was the reason why many writers became, and I didn't have a problem with them because I think they're great guys. So that wasn't an issue at all. But technically it was, even when they were co-producers or whatever, if I wanted to change the scene, I could do it. There are a few things that I added, but I never really felt, apart from one scene, I never really felt that they objected to it. Like for instance, there is a scene towards the end where Elizabeth finds her young self in the dreamlike kind of a scene where she unwraps her from the tape. That unwrapping from the tape, which I thought was very important because she frees herself, was not in the script. And that was, I think, a very important addition. So that was something that we added, that I added, Some of the transitions from the past to the present or the other way around were not necessarily scripted. Like, for instance, at some point you see the front door of the house and it happens to be a model house and therefore you go into a model thing. All these kind of things were not necessarily in the script. There are a lot of these small things that are not necessarily there, but that is not unusual. And the one time that the writers didn't like it was when Carrie Fisher, her boat has sunk and she walks with Phoebe Cates, with Elizabeth, along the waterside or something. And then she smokes a cigarette while she's sort of like jogging. And she says, oh, can you feel it? The rush is coming, that sort of thing. That was all dialogue that she made up on the spot. And the writers absolutely did not like it. But I thought it was funny. Because Carrie is such a comical talent. Mm-hmm. Also, when she finds Fred in the chair and she sort of strangles him while she doesn't see him and he's actually not there. Now she made up, do I have him? That sort of thing. Slap him, and that is all Carrie. So that's if awesome. There's any improvisation, it is actually see who did the most of that.
Wow, that's really
that's really cool. I wouldn't have expected that.
It's a cool little tip.
So you had mentioned that you had a little hot streak for a month in Hollywood, and that's what got you for Drop Dead Fred. What caused your little hot streak initially? Well,
Hollywood is it's a special place, huh? And there's so many gold diggers like I was. Not only as director, but more than anything like actors. Mm-hmm. And the good thing is that I had no problem with being homesick. I loved it. I loved the superficiality. I think I was born for that. And driving in a car on the freeway, I thought it was fantastic. And so all these things. So what I absolutely did was that I went to a lot of parties. And, now you wouldn't say it because I never drink alcohol. So I probably was the only one who remembered the parties later. I didn't drink alcohol then. But at a certain point, it does become, if you are lucky enough to land in the right crowd. And, I was early 30s. So the young executives who were not really in top positions, but a goal of the young executives at that time was to know as many people as they could. And so I landed in a circle of people who were on the way up. And because they knew me, and then when they went up, that helped. I mean, it sounds like extremely, almost like cliche, but that's the way it worked. I don't think I could have done that when I was 50, because I would never have been in that upcoming circle anymore.
Right.
And and still, I remember Nina Jacobson, who was a reader in, I don't know if it was Paramount or Disney, I think it was Disney, but a reader, which is about the lowest of the lowest. And she was a reader, so she judged scripts and all that, and then usually her reader's report was thrown away because nobody ever looks at it, but it is done just in case. And, she was a friend of mine, and we played poker, and I never played poker, so I lost everything. But I thought, oh, yeah, I have to do like they do. So then Nina slowly became bigger, became head of the Disney production unit. And then when she was fired, which was, of course, very horrible, there was a new director of Disney, and she was fired while she was in the delivery room with her partner, who got a baby at that point. But then she made the Hunger Games. She became one of the biggest producers. And all those guys who were not really big producers or big executives were all in that period in the group of people I knew. And half of them, of course, you never heard of again. And that could have been the same with me. You could have been have a big mouth and tell great jokes, and it completely fails, or you're lucky. But it's not only luck, of course. You can get lucky once, but if you don't deliver, it's over.
Right.
But I had the luck that I fell in with the right crowd, and that I did a lot of things, and I had no ego, in the sense that I've made pretty big films in Holland. I've been extremely successful, which is actually not such a good thing when you're young. But the films didn't mean anything because they were local films for America. And no matter that there were 1 million people who saw them in the theaters here, when there were 12 million people living in Holland and 1 million see your film, that's quite a lot. Mm-hmm. But it didn't mean anything. But I didn't have an ego about that. I just showed them the films, and if they liked them, they liked them. If they didn't, they didn't. So I think I was lucky of having elements in my character that helped. God, is this too serious?
No,
not yet.
I will say though, some of your films are a little, definitely a lot more serious. I've seen some trailers to some of them. They look like they got some crazy things happening. It's specifically the deadly virtues: love, honor, and obey. That one look crazy.
So what is your if you had the choice of a genre to direct every time, what is your main go-to, or what do you like doing the most?
Oh, it's like it's a little bit like children. You don't really have a preference for a film, as I don't have a preference for a genre. But having said that, I think that Drop That Fred and a film I made in Holland, Flight of Rainbirds, which are both comedies with a serious undertone. Okay. I think that's where I'm probably best. This is by the way, it's a fun story, so why not tell you? When I was Miami Vice was the first thing I was offered in America, and it was because one of my Dutch films went to the producer. He got a videotape. There were no DVDs yet. We had a videotape, and the previous producer had not rewound the film. So the film had stopped at the one action scene in that movie, which lasted about 2 minutes. And it's a very stylish film. So the producer who decided on the new director saw that and thought, oh, this guy can make stylish action. Let's give it a try. He's European. Let's give it a shot. So I had to come to another director who then finally made the decision whether or not you did it. And he said, and he was there, and they had told me to dress dapper. Now, I didn't know what dressing dapper was, but when I was there, I saw he wore sandals and no socks. So if you ever need to know what dapper is, wear sandals but no socks. That is what dapper is.
That's all you need.
Score well with the Hollywood executive. And so he said, so what do you like? What kind of a film do you want to make? So this is a story about Jong, you know. And I said, well, I better can tell you what I shouldn't do. I shouldn't make a musical because, you know, we in Europe have no traditions in musical. And then I wanted to say, and he said, and the other thing we shouldn't do, and then he interrupted me. And I wanted to say I shouldn't make science fiction because we know nothing about science fiction. But he interrupted me before I said that. And he shouted to his secretary, Annie, what's the new show about? And she shouted back, aliens. And he said, aliens. I said, I love it. So,
I'll tell you, I love it. I got it. That's awesome.
But if I have a choice to make a psychological underpinned film that's a drama brought as a comedy would be my favorite.
That's really cool.
I like
that. Yeah, I like it.
So I guess the last question I would ask about Drop Dead Fred is if before we move on to all your other work, if you could, what would you do differently with the film? And would you still, I know that I'm kind of tagging on two questions.
Yeah.
Would you still make another?
There's a moment where a film is itself, and it's almost like whatever you did on it, the film has taken over. But I don't want to skew your question because I think it's a valid question. I resaw the film a little bit by coincidence about a month ago, and I found it difficult in the beginning, and I particularly thought the script was thin at points. And with thin, I mean Rick was brilliant, the scenes as such were brilliant, but the connections between the scenes and therefore the storytelling was not as strong as it could have been. And I think the film is saved by the flashbacks, which were really very good, by the intention of the movie, that the fact that she is so badly treated and you start to feel for her, and by the ending where you really feel that she liberates herself. But to give you a very simple example, which I think is not strong script writing, at a certain point she wants to go back to her husband, and they know her husband is going to be at a wine tasting. And we had to get them to the wine tasting. And so Rick makes a joke about him. He sits with her in the room, and she looks very sad. And she says, "Oh, you know, doesn't have a husband, doesn't have this, da da da." Makes joke, falls on a little sofa, foot chair or something, and finds a poster of the wine tasting. And says, "Oh, what's that? Oh, the wine tasting. Yeah, that's the wine tasting of my husband, and he's going to be there tonight. Oh, let's go there." That is not strong script writing. I mean, it's almost like you could put a title card there. Now we go to the wine tasting.
Sign wine tasting this way.
Wine tasting this way. Exactly. That would have been funnier. So there's a few of these moments. Also, the sinking of the houseboat is a little bit. It didn't have the money to make it look good, and it doesn't really look good. And it's a bit of a distraction. I suppose we thought, oh, you know, it's great, a houseboat that sinks. But I don't think that it's good enough, to be honest. And it is story-wise not good enough. It's a distraction of the real story. So there's elements in the story that I think that could have been better. But I'm certainly not blaming the writers, because that's very cheap to do. Because the same thing goes for directing. You know, there are certain scenes in the film that I think, well, I maybe should have talked to the actors a bit longer. And you can't blame the actors, you can only blame the director. So there is room for improvement.
Well, I mean, hey, at least you admit it, and you're not sitting there saying, "Oh, it's perfect." But to me, it is quite fucking perfect. It's a great film, and I'm so sorry. I've mostly talked about that when you have this illustrious career that we should speak of on your other. So, tell us about your other film works, because I know a lot of them are is it Dutch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So
I that's what can you say? I was born in Holland, so I made my first 6 features before I was 33. I made 6 features in Holland, and a few of them were very successful. And Holland, it's a small country. It's a European country, so we're dependent in filmmaking. There's no film industry in the good sense of the word. It is a subsidized cottage hobby. And that's very unkind, but that's what it is. That you can't really be a filmmaker and commercially live off it. You depend on subsidy, which means that in the time I started, there were probably 3 or 4 feature films made a year. Which also meant that if I made a film that was successful, my shot of getting a new subsidy was better. So it means that if I made a success, everybody hated me. Because if I made a success, I took away money from other people. That has become a lot better. There's more films made. The people interact a lot better with each other. But when I was 33 and made 6 films and made a few big hits, I thought, you know what? I can go on here till I'm 65 and get a subsidy, and maybe I'm refuse a subsidy. Then 2 years later, I will get one. I thought, well, you know what? Why not be nobody again? So I literally went to Hollywood with 2 suitcases. I knew one person who actually turned out to be not what he said he was. He had presented him as a high executive, and I think he worked in the mailroom. But so I didn't know anyone. I came there with 2 suits, one suit with bad looking clothes and one with the videotapes. And I was nobody again, and it was fantastic. and then it started, and I had given myself 3 months. Jesus, I talk a lot about myself.
That's what you're here to do, man.
That's what we're here for.
So I given myself 3 months, but smart as I am, I still wrote a column for a Dutch daily newspaper, and that was a weekly column. And I had done that for many years, and I continued to do that. And the subject was young, ambitious European filmmaker goes to Hollywood because he wants to be rich and famous, and everything goes wrong. So I could write a weekly column, and I did a radio show about the same subject, also for a Dutch radio national station. So the friends I started to build up in Hollywood, I always use Hollywood, but it's of course Los Angeles. They said, "Oh, you should do that for the Santa Monica Public Radio Station. It's such a funny radio show." And I, arrogant as I was, I said, "Well, if I make a radio show, I'll do it for national public radio. I don't do it for a local station." So they said, "You'll never get that. It's impossible." That's embarrassing by now. So a few months later, I went to Washington because 1 or 2 of my Dutch films were shown there by the Dutch embassy in a festival or something. So I literally went to a telephone cell, which of course I could have done in LA also. But I went to a telephone cell in Washington and called the National Public Radio and got the Sunday morning edition on the line for whatever reason. And said, I make a comedy radio show about Hollywood. It's a European guy who wants to be rich and famous and everything goes wrong. Don't you think that could be fun for you? And because I had made the Dutch one mostly in English, because there were a lot of English people there, said, I'll send you a few of the items. So as of then, I made radio shows for National Public Radio.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was going to say, that's really cool.
And the stupid thing is I don't have it myself because I didn't have a radio. Sometimes I went to my car to listen to the radio when they broadcast on the Sunday morning edition with Susan Stamberg, Yeah, they were very kind people, very, very kind, good people. But the weird thing was the executives in Hollywood, when I told them I made these shows, they knew the show. They knew the show better than they knew my film because they didn't have time to watch a Dutch feature film with subtitles. That was that took too much time. They had their assistants do that. But on Sunday morning, they very often listened to a quality radio program like the Sunday morning edition, and the radio items were in there. So that helped me also. I don't know why we started with it. Oh yeah, that was about my career. That helped me to get in there. And then Miami Vice was the first offer I got. But it wasn't after 3 months. It was after a year. Because things happened and things went wrong and you get offers. But I just liked it. I liked the place. I really adored living there. The weather is good. The car driving was good. My first car, by the way, was a Volvo where the gas tank leaked. So I was always afraid somebody would throw their cigarette butt under my car.
Oh shit!
Jeez.
That would be pretty intense, actually.
Right?
Like that's not something I would have actually thought of. So no. Yeah, I'd be driving pretty fucking scared.
Yeah.
No, and when you're cheap, because of course I didn't have a lot of money there. When you're cheap, you fix your leaking gas tank with a bar of specific soap. And you rub it against the gas to seal the leak. That's how you fix your own car.
That's better than gum.
Yeah, or I was thinking like duct tape or aluminum foil.
But after Miami Vice, because the weird thing is in Hollywood, everybody, you meet everybody if you're a little bit lucky and have a good agent. And they watch the film or had their assistants watch the film and they all like it, but nobody will take a chance. A show like Miami Vice will take a shot with you. Mm-hmm. And I can talk for a whole evening about Miami Vice, by the way. My guest star was James Brown, the godfather of soul.
Nice.
Who I didn't know who that was. So I didn't. So I can tell you extremely funny stories about that, but that's another story.
We're gonna have to get you back on.
My first offer was Highway to Hell. No, I was offered Highway to Hell, and it took ages, and then it was on, and it was off, and it was on, and it was off, and ultimately we made the film, and I was very disappointed with Highway to Hell. I didn't think it was good, but then the writer Brian Helgeland, who later won an Oscar with LA Confidential and started to direct like Knight's Tale and all that sort of thing. He said, if you take your name off, I'll put my name on because I think it's really a nice film. Oh, I'll show you something. I'm not running away.
He's left the building. And I think I lied. I actually do have more questions about this.
I'm not sure if you can read this, but this is the official Directors Guild letter that Highway to Hell is now made by Alan Smithy.
Ah. Huh.
Because Alan Smithy is the pseudonym that everybody uses who wants to take their name off. And when I received the letter, that was after months of negotiations between the lawyers and the financiers, Hamdale and me and all that. When I received the letter, I burst out in tears and kept my name on. And it isn't as big a cult film as Drop Dead Fred, but it has become a cult film also.
That's awesome.
What the fuck does a... Oh, sorry. What
Oh, no.
what the hell does a director know? Nothing. They're the worst judges of their own material. They don't know anything.
Spoken like a true director. So I totally lied. I have one last question about Drop Dead Fred.
Another last question.
More so, whatever happened to the props, like the Jack box that Fred was from?
That one I don't know. That
I want it.
That would have been a good prop. The Jack in the Box. I still have, which is not that visible. I still have the butcher block that is in the kitchen of the apartment.
Oh, nice.
That's cool.
It's actually in the house in London, and I literally 2 weeks ago asked my ex because I heard she wanted to get rid of it. I said, that has sentimental value. Can I ship it over to Holland? So. I'm going to get it again in my house.
Awesome.
And I somewhere I have a Drop Dead Fred watch, but that wasn't in the movie. There was a merchandising thing. Very often what happens is that after the film is finished, literally the day after the film is finished, that crew members can buy props and clothes.
Oh.
They're usually more interested in the clothes than in the props.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
And so I know, for instance, that that's not necessarily a prop, but the credit sequence, there were drawings made by a guy, an animator, and he loved it so much he made drawings. And then I, for whatever reason, had gotten these drawings, the original, and at a certain point there was a fundraiser at the Directors Guild, and I donated them to the Directors Guild. So who knows who has these now? But I think some of the props, probably some of the crew members may have them.
Damn,
Interesting.
I gotta find. I'm gonna like do some soul searching and look for this box.
Yeah.
We're gonna get it back. So, have you been working on a film recently?
Well, the essential word in your question is recently.
Well, I asked because there's one I seen and it says post production now, so I don't know.
Which one is that?
The my friend Anne Frank.
Yes, I am. Legally, I can't say a word about it.
Okay, that's fine.
I was originally the director, and I'm not anymore.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna say it looked great, but not anymore.
I make jokes about that, but and I can of course not, if you ask a question, or shake my head or something. I don't think the contract says I can't shake my head, but
that's okay. We won't get you into any legal trouble.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I got so since you've directed and
never happened to me before. I can only say that, but
okay. So since you've directed in like overseas and in the States, is there any differences between the two, or any like challenges you face?
Yeah, there are differences. There are differences and many similarities. For instance, like the crews are pretty much the same everywhere. You have talented people in America, many talented people, by the way. You have talented people in South Africa and Germany, everywhere. Mm-hmm. And of course, if your pool is bigger, you have a shot of getting more talented people. But that's just a numbers question. The differences are a little bit more in the approach. America has more of a industry approach. It's better regulated, and the regulations can tie you up a little bit, which was definitely the case in the past, but that's a really long time ago in England, where the unions were so strict that the charm of filmmaking was lost. I suppose that was true in Hollywood also, but that was probably before my time. But there are some regulations, like, whenever you go over a certain amount of time, you get meal penalties. Whenever you do this, then that. Whenever you do this, you have to have so many hours of rest between the finish of the shoot. Many of these rules are very helpful because they protect you to some degree. Sometimes the rules are a little bit constraining you, and you lose the charm of the filmmaking. But where the real differences is actually mostly in the mentality, and that expresses itself mostly in the actors, actually. That, for instance, the actors I'm generalizing a little bit, but that's impossible not to do. Mm-hmm. But in general, the actors in Europe have the feeling that they have to protect the integrity of the story, particularly when it's based on a novel or something. So they find themselves to be the gatekeepers of the quality and the integrity of what you're doing. In America, the actors are far more busy with protecting the image of themselves. And I won't name names, but in Drop Dead Fred, when I, being European, I sometimes found an angle interesting for whatever reason, but there were also angles like from low, and there were actors who did not want to do that. And they didn't want to do it because they didn't think it was flattering for them. And that's probably true. A low angle is not always flattering for any actor, but specifically not for women. And I'd never thought about the reason that people could put their own image above the importance of the story. Mm-hmm. That would not quickly happen in Europe. But in Europe, they are less prepared than they are in America. You have, of course, a bunch of brats, but in general, the actors in America know their dialogue when they come on the set. In Europe, it happens very often. They say, "Oh, what scene are we doing? Oh, let me read the dialogue. Oh, yeah. Give me 5 minutes to remember it." And I think, you give me 5 minutes. That's 5 minutes of my time,
Yeah.
So there is a difference, but that's the difference. Ultimately, when you think about it, it's different in social attitude. Mm-hmm. The social awareness in Europe is different than the social awareness in America. That is not saying that one is better than the other, but there is a difference. Okay. I made a film in South Africa, and there was, for instance, like no organization whatsoever. You went to a street, and we had a scene in the script, like a scene in a shopping mall, in a clothing shop, and you literally went to a shopping mall, and you knocked. Well, you walked in and you said, "Can we film here?" And if they said no, you went to the next one till you found one. So you did the location search while you were shooting. That's unthinkable. And I was like completely flabbergasted. I never thought that. I thought that is like something that is from 30 years ago or something. And whenever you needed an extra, it's a crew member, that sort of thing. So that also was because their mentality was that, you had to all do everything at the same time. It wasn't restricted. And in Germany, I made a few TV movies in Germany, and they were extremely, they did everything I said. If I had said now the whole crew has to sit on the roof, they would do it also. They were so obliging that it was a little bit scary. You started to think, no wonder that they all marched in the Second World War, because they did everything they were told. Yeah. There's not many German listeners, are there?
I mean, not yet.
Not yet.
I get into big problems. But in all fairness, the Germans were very open to be. They accepted foreign directors. And America was very open. England, where I lived, God damn it, for 12 years. I've lived there for 12 years. I barely ever worked there. When I left England, then I made a few films there, because I brought money to make the films. And then, you can come in there. But the British are very kind. They're very polite. And they will always stick to the people they know, which are, did you go to the same university? I have two British sons, and one went to Oxford. So I think he has a better shot.
I mean, fair enough.
Right? And that is not true in America, for instance. In America, really, you have to have talent, and America can be very tough, but everybody gets a shot, within certain limits, but everybody gets a shot, and it doesn't matter what your background is. If you deliver what the financiers want, you get another shot. If you don't deliver, then it doesn't matter how good you are and where you come from. You can, you basically you're God. So America has a fairness which I admired. It's very tough, by the way. You're not allowed on many mistakes, right. But at the same token, there is no prejudgment.
Right. So your movie, The Deadly Virtues, Love, Honor, Obey, that looked like there was a lot of sexual craziness going on in the trailer. I'm not really sure what was happening, but yeah. So
it's a soft reflection of the movie. The trailer.
Yeah. So what is that one about exactly?
Well, it is the story behind it is very. There's always nice stories, but I had made a film in Holland called The Bombardment, The Blitz, sometimes called, which was about bombing of Rotterdam in 1940. And that was a film I don't think I've ever, within Holland, never ever had so much publicity as with that film, because the leading actor was quite a well-known singer. And the film was, Drop Dead Fred didn't have great reviews, but they were, lukewarm or whatever. I don't think I've ever had worse reviews than for that film. No, I don't read the reviews anymore. I don't do that since my second movie. But your friends will tell you. That's why you have friends for, They will tell you, don't read that paper. They always say it's shit. Oh, no. So you know pretty much what's that. But then I went to visit 2 weeks after the premiere. I went to visit my sons in London, and a good friend of mine, Elliot called me, Elliot Grove from Raindance Festival in London, called me and said, I have this script and I don't know what to do with it. I said, give it to me, I read it. And I read it and I thought it was brilliant. It was basically a genre film where a couple is in a house and gets a guy breaks in and terrorizes them. But it had such a deeper layer to it that I thought it was brilliant. I said, Elliot, you can get Cronenberg for this film, or you can get such and such. The only thing is then it's going to be a film of 5 million, and it's going to take you 2 or 3 years to get it made. And Elliot said, well, we have something like a little bit less than £100,000. And I said, Elliot, actually, you can make the film for that. You can't have a great crew, you can't have this, you can't have that, you can't have famous actors, but you can make a film. And as I just came off a film where I thought I'll never make a film in my life again after these reviews. They will never give me money ever again. I just did it. 3 months later, we just made a film for no money, which is the best cure you can have. If you have had a very bad experience, the best thing you can do is not sulk, not talk about it, not criticize the critics, but make another film.
Yeah. It's good.
Knock down, get back up. I feel like every movie that gets bad reviews from critics, I feel like I like those movies.
Yeah.
Like those are the best movies.
This might sound like weird, but I don't necessarily blame the critics, and I don't necessarily think they're wrong. They might have an opinion that is true for them at that moment and for their social group, but films are to be seen with an audience and with the right audience, and the critics should write for their audience, which is not necessarily the audience for that movie. But it is a moment in time. It is their opinion for a moment in time. And Drop Dead Fred is the best example. That film has evolved. The film hasn't changed. The film is still the same. Right. But the thinking about what happens in the film has changed. And therefore the film has gotten a new appreciation. And that can happen. So I don't like it, of course, if they don't like the movies, because I'm vain enough, to like the praise. But I'm not dependent on it. You make a film for your audience, and you hope the audience will like it. And it's a tough life. I always feel, honest to God, I feel that if you're a very well balanced person, and very much in harmony with yourself and your life, you're definitely not a film director.
I thought you were going to have a nice virtue or something for us there.
Yeah.
You're not a film director. Dang it.
That's awesome. So are there any future plans for any more projects?
Yeah. I'm busy with a small project here in Holland, which I would love to do actually English language, not because it would work better in English, but your gateway to the world is better. It's a bit of a prejudice, but it's still true that a film that is not English language made, so with basically English speaking actors, has a tougher time to get seen in the world. Drop Dead Fred could have been made in Holland. We wouldn't have Rick Mail, but suppose you had an actor like that, and the actor was just as good. The film would not have been seen by the amount of people that saw the film now. Just because New Line distributed it partially through Universal, that film was shown in 50, 60 countries. And that is still true. It is a horrible thing, but how many times do you, even in New York or San Francisco, how many times do you still see a French film? Now, France is a big country, or an Italian film. It barely happens. So if it's not an English language film, you have an upfront uphill battle. So having said that, I'm busy with a small film, which I hope to make here in Holland next year. God knows if it's going to happen. And I'm producing a stop motion film. And the stop motion film is about Nosferatu. Nosferatu is the classic Murnau film, expressionistic silent era. But Murnau made the very first vampire movie, and based on the Bram Stoker story. That was the very first one. So we're doing. You can't call it a remake, but it is a variation of Nosferatu, where the woman, the original Nosferatu, is the damsel in distress and is basically the victim. And we, change of times, we made her the hero. She has to fight the vampire, but it is in stop motion. The whole expressionism of the 20s of last century is called in stop motion. That works perfectly. And I became the producer because I don't really have a strong tie to animation, but the director approached me 2 years ago. And I thought I was such a great man and such a nice person. I think he's much nicer than I am. And I thought, I can, maybe I can improve a little bit by working together with him. So there are still things, but you become more selective because you know that things take a lot of time. And in the past, I had always like 5-6 things at the same time, and then you shoot with hail, and what hits is the one. And now you become a little bit more selective because the time you otherwise would spend on different projects, while you know that some of them won't work, you now say, well, I'm going to concentrate me on the ones that I really think are fun to do. And the fun is mostly in the other people. And the time that you now create, you spend on your social life, which when you're young and ambitious, you tend not to do that.
Yeah, I definitely understand that, and definitely needing to be picky with what you choose, because that is a serious time investment, and basically you gotta like get into like a miniature marriage with a bunch of people,
right?
the crew, the actors.
There's a weird truth that because you said you have to be picky, and that's true, but at the same time, sometimes you don't know. I once made a German TV movie which I didn't want to do because I thought TV was horrible and all that sort of thing. But I done some. I was through with my money. I lived too expensive in a too big a house, and I had to do something for money, which I barely ever have done in my life. I never made commercials, for instance, and that sort of thing. Now I would like to make commercials. I want to sell out, but nobody wants to buy anymore. So, but I did a TV movie. And I hated myself for doing it, because I thought it was low and it wasn't right and it wasn't a good script. So I think I was very obnoxious and unpleasant. And I changed everything because this is shit and this is not good and this and this and that and and I if you fire me, fine, that. And it turned out to be one of the best films I made.
Nice.
Because I didn't care. And sometimes if you don't care, it helps you enormously. And so that's true the other way around. Sometimes if you care a lot, that's not always the best, because you become vulnerable.
Yeah, you have to have that balance. There's always a time and place to care, not care, and you gotta evenly distribute it.
Yeah, exactly.
What a wisdom, eh?
We're not fully mindless.
Just what we want to be.
I gotta say, it is absolutely awesome to have you, and big shout out to Randy Edelman for getting us in contact with you as well.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Putting a good word in there.
Randy's a great man. He's absolutely fantastic.
Man, we had a blast talking to him.
Oh yeah. He is awesome people, and great musician. I mean. Re-listening to the soundtrack for Drop Dead Fred, the little music that goes on in the background is just, it's cool. I talked to that guy that did that. And now I can say I talked to the guy that directed this. And I know you don't drink, and I hope you will still appreciate this anyway. We're gonna make a drinking game out of this. So anytime Rick happens to say mega bitch or snot face, we're gonna drink.
We're gonna
Oh, good.
Probably get alcohol.
Where the mega bitches, I hear you have to finish, but the mega bitches come from the fact that we only were allowed to say mega bitch twice. And that's why the rest changed in mega beast. It was a censorship thing. So you won't get drunk because there's only 2 mega bitches, I think.
Man.
If all the mega
come up
bitches
with
had
more.
been in there that were planned, you would be drunk by the end of the movie.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And I know he does say snot face quite often. So
Yeah, that's true. He says nothing.
I think we'll be all right.
We'll get drunk.
Okay.
But it was such an honor to have you. Thank you so much for coming on here and getting to talk with us. And we definitely look forward to hopefully more American movies. Like
I hope so.
At least something here like a little more updated. Drop Dead Fred. We could do a Drop Dead Josh or something. Drop Dead Dakota.
Drop Dead, I'm in it. I'm all for it.
It was a pleasure. I hope your viewers, listeners will like it, and
I think they will.
and take the good things out of it.
Yeah,
do something great with it.
We'll have to try to get you back on so that we can talk more, since there's so much more that we can talk about.
Oh yeah, then I can still tell you my James Brown stories.
Yeah, exactly. See, we got lots. We'll have to get you back on for sure.
Absolutely. Well, again, man, it was a pleasure. And before I let you go, is there any words of wisdom you would like to throw out there to the listeners?
Oh God, if I had prepared for it, I would have come up with a wisdom. But I
put you on the spot.
Be nice for the people that are nice to you. That is always a good thing.
It is.
Short, sweet, and simple. I like it.
Yeah, you can't beat that one.
So, well, folks, that's it. Stay mindless.
Stay mindless, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Mindless Morning Show. We appreciate you picking us out of the many great podcasts out there. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that little bell to get notified whenever we release a new episode or bonus content. Now go enjoy the rest of your mindless day.